Now you know how to work with shape parameters. The first section of the shape parameters: X position, Y position, width, height, rotation, and corner radius. Today we'll be talking about fill section, fill section parameters, and what exactly we can do here. You can take a look when we're creating anything. In this case, again, I'll create a rectangle, but you can play later with all other shapes, with circle, with line, with stars, with polygons. It's up to you. So I'm working with rectangle because it will be much easier for me to show you what exactly to do. Later you can play with that. It will be more, when you practice, you will get more knowledge from practice. So here I'm teaching you what to do, how to do, why to do it. And then when you play it, you actually put it in your head, to your brain, and then you can use it. You can take it from there. Not to start searching it from my videos, from YouTube videos, from articles, from just anywhere, but you will get it from your head. And this is how we become efficient and super fast. So today let's talk about fill parameter and how to work with that. So I just created the rectangle, 100 by 100. You can choose whatever size you want. And by default, just maybe sometimes when you create something, you don't see fill parameter. You just created something, and yeah, by default you don't see it. It's somewhere here, will be only in the layer panel. Rectangle. And fill parameter is off. So how to add it, how to switch it on, just press plus here. And then by default you will see the color D9, D9, D9. This will be the color that will be by default. A full lesson for just one line? What? Yeah, because honestly, everything that you see above here was created just from using that one line that you see here. And it's super powerful parameter when you know how to use it. Today you will learn. So let's get started. What do we see here? By default, we see here the icon of the color itself. Then we see the value, hex value of this color. Then we see 100%. This is for the opacity of this specific color. This is not the opacity of the layer. This is, by the way, the opacity of the layer, and you can change it just by clicking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you see how it's changing. 7, it's 70%. When I click 72, like 72, pretty fast, 72. Now it's 72%. 1, it's 10%. 0 is 100%, or when you click it again a couple of times, double tap and you will see it switch to 0. By default, click 0 again and you will get back to layer opacity 100%. If you don't know what's the difference, by the way, between opacity and transparency, these are just the opposite sides of one thing, of one value. When opacity is 1 or 100%, transparency is 0. When transparency is 100%, then it means that opacity is 0. So just let's imagine we have the line value, opacity 100%, transparency 100%, and just by moving it you will see what is changing. So now let's get back to our line here. We have this eye icon here. I can turn the fill parameter on or off, specifically for here, or I can remove it by clicking minus. I'm not going to remove it right now. I'll keep it because we'll be working with that now. Now, by default, we have this gray color, D9, D9, D9. This course is not about colors. If you want to learn more about colors, just follow me and maybe I'll create some specific resource about colors. about different parameters and all the color theory and everything. Today we'll be talking about Figma, specifically what Figma is using for colors. And here you see this hex color, and each pair here defines the RGB colors, red, green, blue. It's the mix of red, green, and blue. You don't have to know how it works. If you want to, just message me, take a consultation if you want to learn more about it, about color theory, and specifically what's the difference between pigment colors and light colors. All these things, I don't want to overwhelm you. You don't need them, honestly, in your work too much to understand all these parameters. They will make you faster, smarter, more efficient, but at the same time, you don't need to know all about these things. What you need to know, though, is that by clicking on this icon here, you will see an additional panel that gives you so many options. And this is why this is a separate lesson. Here you see the color wheel. So basically this is the color wheel, and it goes from 0 to 360. We have opacity panel here, opacity slider that goes from 0 to 100%, or from 0 to 1. And then we have also here this tool that allows you to pick the color from anywhere on the screen, on your canvas. When you click on that, you see it's selected, and now when I'm hovering on anything here, I can choose the color that I want it to be. Let's imagine I click here, and boom, now my shape is, when the shape is selected, of course, now my shape is a different color. This is what you can use when you want to take the color from the image, for example, or when you created the color palette for your design, and then you just pick it from this color palette. You can use it from here. The next thing that we see is hex, and it's a drop down. Then we see the same parameters here. 100%, this is our, as you can see, this is our opacity that we discussed already. Then document colors, and we see just only documents colors now. When we create the style guide, you will see that there are some additional options here, like local colors or colors from libraries. You can pick from them as well. By default, it shows you when you have only document colors. It means that these are all the colors that are used anywhere in this document, in this file. You can pick from them. And what else? Let's click on this drop down here. We'll see RGB, CSS, HSL, HSB. What is that? These are different, not color spaces, but different representation of how to choose colors. What type of choosing colors do you prefer? By default, it's hex, which is, I don't want to overwhelm you again with all these numbers, but the idea comes from that every single number here, every single pair here, like EA, this is the hex representation of this color in RGB panel. In hex, it goes from 00 to FF. When we are working with RGB, it goes from 0 to 55, to 255. But again, this is a separate, this should be a separate course just about colors. But this is what you need to know. What's great to know about these things, that sometimes colors can be presented in this short form. This is really amazing that it's a short form that you can use in your designs. You can share it with other people. Then we have RGB parameters. When I click on that, now I see a little bit different representation of this color, and now I see exactly RGB. So let's go with hex. I'll show you how they work together. If I set the color to black, and black is all zeros, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and it's black. In RGB, it will be also 0, 0, 0 for RGB, 0, 0, 0. But when I set RGB to 255, 255, 255, this is our white color, pure white. When I go to hex, it will be FF, FF, FF. And here we go. And then the mix of red, green, and blue, RGB represents red, green, blue, allows us to change the color and to set whatever we want. If it's too hard for you to work with values, you don't have to. Honestly, you don't have to. Just look at this panel here, and by default, look at this panel, you see the color wheel, choose the color that you want to work with. Let's imagine it will be blue. And now choose the particular tint and shade of this color. And let's imagine I love this one. That's it. Done, close. Now you have the color that you want. But if you want to go a little bit further and you want to understand all these different parameters, you can work with them. And where do you need them, by the way? Well, hex, super fast and easy way that is used in web design and mobile apps. Use that one. In some cases in web, we use RGB, specifically when we need to change the opacity of the color. Today in CSS allows you to change the opacity also in hex mode, where you just adding at the very end, you add 2 additional parameters from 0, 0 to FF for the opacity. And then CSS colors, that's exactly what you can give to developers, but they will see it in the inspect mode. HSL, this is another representation of how to choose colors. It means HSL stands for hue, saturation, lightness. Hue, that's exactly your color wheel, from 0, which is red, to 360, which is red, or 375, which is red. Why it's still red? Well, because it's the wheel. But if we set something to, I don't know, 220, then for hue, then it will be blue. 220 for hue, it's blue. The next parameter is saturation, is how saturated your color will be. For example, by default, it's 100, and for the lightness, it goes from, again, lightness goes from 0 to 100. When the light is 0, it means that you don't have light, it's black. When you have lots of light, it's 100%, then it will be white. Boom, now it's white. When you're changing light, the amount of light that goes to this object, to like 50%, this is where you have the exact color that you want to see, the exact one. If you want to make it a little bit lighter, change lightness to increase lightness to, let's imagine, 60. Now it's a little bit lighter. Or you can change it to 30 and it will be darker. Let's go back here. And saturation, by the way, when you're changing lightness, it's the same as if you would move this slider, this dot here, top and bottom, from 0 to 100. When you change the slider horizontally, you are changing saturation, and also from 0 to 100. 0, not saturated color at all. You will see gray, white, or black. When you add a little bit of color, a little bit of saturation, you see it here, you are changing the parameter. And when you are moving anywhere here, you see that in the HSL mode, you see that I'm changing only saturation and lightness. Hue stays the same. I change hue only on this color wheel. The same work with HSB. The only difference here that it stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. Not light, but brightness. How bright the color is. Again, when we set it to 220 for our blue, when I change this slider just vertically on the vertical line, this is where my brightness, like full brightness 100%, lowest brightness. When I change it horizontally, saturation. Similar to lightness. The only difference here that our pure color, when I'm working with HSB mode, my pure color that I chose from the color wheel will be saturation 100, brightness 100. While in HSL mode, my saturation will be 100, but lightness will be 50. This is the only difference that you need to understand, because this is how light work and this is how brightness work. What parameter to choose for you, it depends on you, whatever you want, what type of working with colors to choose from, depend fully on you. If you are in the beginning of your career, of your design career, I recommend you to choose hex and just go here and choose the color wheel and then move it a little bit here and see what's happening and then choose the colors. That's it. When you are a little bit more experienced, you can choose between HSL or HSB and just work directly with parameters. When you want, for example, to set the color for your paragraph text, that will be not black but gray with a little bit of bluish color. In this case, you will set your you will choose your color itself that you want to. Then you will set brightness to about like 20 or 30. But then you will also change the saturation to about like 10. So the color will be still dark, but it will be much lighter version of the black. And you can use it for your secondary color, for example. Or you can go a little bit brighter to 40%. And now this is the color that you will use, for example, for your paragraphs, and for your headlines, you will use something like, let's imagine 10 here, but 10 for your brightness. And then heading will be written in this color. By the way, to choose color tool, here you can just press Command C, and then the tool will be selected. So basically, heading, description, I press Command C, choose the color, and this is what I'll have here. You can set it together. Looks beautiful, incredible, just by using two colors. But as you can see, this is not pure gray and this is not pure black. This is bluish, like dark version of blue, and this is a little bit lighter version of dark blue color that we set here in our HSB mode. But again, this is more like advanced level. By default, you can just work with default parameters hex code. Done, covered this space. But let's go further. How we created all these shapes then? Well, again, when you click here, you see that there are lots of different parameters under this drop down. So we covered everything here at the bottom. What about header? What about this solid? Like, what does it mean? By default, you will see the solid color in Figma. And this is where you change this color. But when you click on this drop down, you see much more parameters here. And you see linear, radial, angular, diamond, image, video. What does it mean? Well, solid is a solid color. That's just pure color that you will set for your element. Linear is linear gradient, radial gradient, angular gradient, diamond gradient, and then you have image and video. How does it work? Well, let's take our shape with a solid color and let's create a gradient now. You click here, select here, linear, and now in the gradients you will see different parameters. Here, this thing that we need only for radial, angular, and also diamond gradient. For linear, just keep in mind that we have this line, and by moving the position of one of these points, you will set a different angle for your gradient. And if you want to set the angle for your gradient 45%, just do this. And then you see two different additional squares here. They represent colors themselves that you can select from here or select directly here, and you can change the color to something else from here. As you can see, opacity 100%. Now you can select another point, another color, and here you can change opacity to 100 and choose the color from here. Done. This is how you just created in a couple of steps this color. Let's create another gradient. So I want to show you that usually when you're creating gradients, you can create gradient that consists not only of two colors, but you can create much more of them, and also you can change the position of this color. First of all, let's start with the position. On this line, this is your gradient line. You can put this line out of your shape to create this effect, for example, or you can move the position of the gradient directly on this line to achieve, this effect where you will have two colors so close to each other that you will create, just by using one gradient, you will create double colored shape. Boom, let's go back. And one additional thing, when we're working with gradients, you can create additional. When you're hovering on this line, you see that additional square appears. It means that you can add additional color. The same here. You can tap somewhere on this area and a new color will be created, will be added to this gradient. So I'm going to click here. I'm just clicking, boom, a new color created. By default, it's exactly the color that is between these two colors, but you can change it. You can change it to a different color here. And this is how you created a little bit more sophisticated gradient. And this is what I'm going to do. I can add as many colors as I want to. This is useful when you are creating, for example, like gold colors, where you have lots of different reflections and shadows. And by creating these colors, you can achieve the effect that you want. Now what I'm going to create the effect of the color that goes from purple, from that pink one through purple to blue one and to darker blue here. This gradient is pretty popular now. You can see it in lots of different designs. When we are creating buttons, for example, you can see buttons like this, and specifically like this. And in the middle you will see the button itself, so it will work exactly like this button. We'll talk about it a little bit later. For now, let's get back to our gradient mode. And this is how you create this gradient. You can add more colors to it. Just keep it in mind. The next gradient that we're going to create is a radial one. You click here, linear, radial, and here you also see parameters, these two colors. The same, you can add additional colors if you want to. Here. And this is how you add. You can remove, by the way, once you select it, you can press delete and remove the color that you don't want to see anymore. But in linear gradient, in radial gradient, when you change the position of this particular dot here, you also change the shape of the gradient. By default, it will be circle, but you can change it to ellipse like this. Sometimes it's super useful when you want to achieve a specific effect. Let's go back to our circle view. Again, this is just linear. If I change the position of it somewhere here, you can use gradient specifically when you want to create 3D shapes. And let's create one of these shapes here. First of all, Let's take our square. Let's change the radius to 50 in this case. So basically we'll create the circle out of our rectangle. This is why rectangle is so powerful, because you can create additional shapes out of it. Now I'm going to change the gradient on this circle, and because it's circle, that's exactly why I'm using radial gradient. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create two additional colors, one here and another one here. Why so? If you know, I have a background in industrial design, and I learned a lot about light, about ergonomics, and about different how light is actually playing on the element. And when you're working with, if you went to art school, you also probably know about that you have a reflection itself. The brightest color, the brightest point will be here. This is exactly where the color, the light is coming from. But the shape itself, the element itself has its own color, and this is our second color here. Let's imagine that it's purple. The third color is exactly the shade, the shadow on the darkest part of our element. So basically, if it's purple, then I'll go to kind of purple color, but on a darker version of it. But also we have a fourth color, which is the reflection from the surface on which this element lays at. So that's why here we'll also, let's imagine that we have just a piece of paper, white paper. Here in this case it will be our purple color, but a little bit lighter version of it. So this is how we create spheres out of circle that was created out of a square. This is how you achieve this effect. And later we'll talk about it in our we'll talk about it a little bit later in our next module about graphic design. Later we will create additional like shadows for this specific element, and then we will use for that linear gradient that we'll remove all unnecessary colors, and the color will go from here to here. The opacity will be 0. For this one, opacity will be 100%, but the color will be darker. And in addition to that, it will be like this color. We'll put it below, change the opacity of it, we'll add layer blue effect, and this is how you will add additional shadow, the shadow that is cast out of the element on the surface. In addition to that, we will create additional effects, but all of these things we will discuss a little bit later in our next module. This is how you create these shapes using radial gradient in this case. And then for shadows, we will be using linear gradients. That's why it's important to know about them. Now let's create another gradient here, and here we will choose angular. Angular, it means that it goes under a particular angle. But angle is, take a sphere, not like a circle, 360, and you create the angular gradient that goes from 0 to 360, and this is how you achieve, it's like, you know, this sphere, this circle, and you see the color is moving on this circle. That's why it's called angular, and you choose the angle on which the colors will be laying. Let's add additional color that will be on this side, and let's imagine it will be this blue, and let's create additional blue that will be on this angle, and this will be darker version of blue. This is how you create this effect. And also you see the dot here, you can also stretch it, and you can change the feeling out of this gradient. Usually we don't use it too much, but sometimes you can achieve really incredible results just by using this angular gradient, specifically when you are creating holograms. Just keep it in mind. At some point we'll create something using this shape, using this gradient. And the last one is diamond gradient. When you select it, it creates you the diamond gradient that goes like a pyramid, that goes from center to the very end point on the shape. You see it here. I can set it all my gradients here, and this is how I achieve a particular effect. For example, when the color goes from really light pink to darker version, then to purple, and in the end it will be just this. This is how I can create a pyramid, for example, the view from the top, or if I want to create, let's imagine here, I select it, I choose the dark color, I set opacity to 0, set the color to purple. Let's imagine I remove this one as well. And for this color, I keep it here, but I'll set it also to pink one. You can also change the stretch of this element, and this is how you can achieve the effect of where the colors go in this direction. And then when you will play with that, you can use this specific element and create a star, for example, or add this as an element of your graphic design. I've never seen people are using it in UI design, so usually just the graphic design element. But sometimes you can achieve really cool effect here, like this pyramid here. And the last two sections that are left here in the fill panel is image and video. We'll be talking about them in the next lesson. Additionally, what I want to say here in this specific lesson, that when you're working with fill color, you have to know that you can create more than just one fill color. You can add additional one. You press on this plus icon, and then you will see that additional color will be created on top of it, and you can change its color that goes on top. You can change its opacity as well, and now I achieved super fast completely different feeling out of it. And also in the fill panel, you also see the blend mode. When you click on this blend mode, you can choose particular type of the blend mode, and you can achieve a different effect by using the blend mode here as well. We'll be talking about blend mode later. Way you can use that when you need, for example, to add something like on top of what you have, when you need to add additional, let's imagine, color or gradient that allows you to put text on top of that. Let's imagine that you're working with the really bright colors. On top of it, you create fill here that goes from dark to transparent, fully transparent. You change the position of these colors from here, or you can do it specifically. Here you change the position of these elements. Boom. This is how you can change the direction of your gradient. And here I'll set from 50 to 100%, but also this will be much darker version of it. This is also dark version, and it will go only like take only half of my element. And now text, brighter text will go here. This is what you can use in your cards, for example, when you're working with images. We'll create that a little bit later. And maybe not this specifically like red color, but usually we'll be working with something close to dark like this. This is what you can do. This is what you can create just using fill color, and you can create fill colors in addition to that and play with them and achieve really complex effects. So by default, you use basic solid color, but then you can create linear gradient, radial gradient, diamond gradient, angular gradient. And on top of that, you can create additional gradients or colors for this fill layer here. And one final Figma Pro secret that I want to add when we are working with fill. As you can see, we're just working with just one section, but we covered so much already. So when we are talking about fill color, what else you can do? You can select the element. Let's imagine that you built a really incredible element. You love the colors, you love the style, love the fill color here. What you can do, you can, first of all, you can hover here when you see this hand, the arm. You can click here, you see that it's selected. You can press Command C, select another element, and press Command V. And then this color, this fill color, will be added specifically to this element. Another thing that you can do, Command Z to go back, you select the element itself and you press Command Option C, select another element, Command Option V, and it copies and pastes the same effect, the same fill color, actually the same styles. It copies all the styles from this element to the new one that you selected and created. Keep it in mind that in Figma, yes, Figma Pro Secrets, advanced techniques, you can copy a specific parameter, or you can copy and paste the entire style of the element. This is what we can achieve working with just fill parameter. Now go and practice, create different shapes. You can practice it with different shapes, as I said. You can create a star, and you can set fill color, linear, and you can go, for example, from yellow at the top to orange at the bottom to create this effect. In addition to that, when you play with parameters of the shape, you change the radius to make it softer, you make the star a little bit bigger, and now you change the color to a little bit different one, and boom, you created a beautiful, absolutely incredible star here with a gradient that goes from yellow to reddish. And if you want to add something else, you just play with different shapes. You press ellipse, you add here ellipse, you play with rotation, you put this element here, change the solid color to white, you duplicate it, you rotate it again, you move it here. Congratulations, you just created this star with reflections. Of course, you can play a little bit more with that. Here, change the opacity, just 5, and boom, you have this star. The next thing that you can do from what you already learned, you can go here in the shapes, go to star again, and set the star here, change the count number to, let's imagine 4, change the ratio to this, rotate this shape, make it a little bit smaller, put it here, change the color to white, and now you see how brighter the star that you created just became. Let's put it here and another star here. Boom! Using the same elements, the same shape that you just learned. So that's why I recommend you to go from simple shapes, from simple elements. Then by using just simple elements, you can create a complex ones that look beautiful. Just 3 lessons: shapes, fill color, and that's basically just 2 lessons in this case. Could you create it before? Well, maybe, but now you know exactly how to do that. And I'll see you in the next lesson. We'll be talking about how to use fill parameter and how to create images and how to create even videos inside of your shape.